The signs are ominous. The fear is palpable. The apprehensions are very real. The world is standing on the brink of a possible apocalypse brought by the Russia-Ukraine war. And this is a direct conflict now between Russia and the United States of America. Is the world actually looking at the possibility of the Third World War? Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast. Over the course of the next half hour, India Today's team of reporters, Geeta, Mohan and I, from Moscow and Warsaw, will get you the latest as the world stares at very dangerous signs ahead.
It's been a month since the world has been plunged into a massive crisis. While a smooth win for Russia seems nearly impossible, there are growing fears that the conflict could engulf first Europe and then the world.
A month of war, wider conflict fears. Russian war machine bogged down. As Ukraine gives a spirited fight back, open nuclear blackmail by Putin. NATO and European Union fear getting sucked in. Does NATO no-fly zone mean World War III? World War III never looked more real. Global doomsday war looms.
Almost 1 month into the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Ukraine hasn't collapsed. Of course, Ukraine's President Zelensky expects the North Atlantic Treaty Organization countries to do more and not remain a silent spectator. NATO countries, of course, have been providing military hardware to Ukraine. But Ukraine not just wants more military hardware, it also wants a peacekeeping force on ground. NATO so far has said a clear no to declaring a no-fly zone over Ukraine, a desperate demand of the president of the country. But will Ukraine now expect the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to provide more than just military hardware? Of course, Germany is providing Strela missiles. NATO countries are providing Stinger missiles, Javelin anti-tank guided missiles, the other anti-tank guided missiles. But a lot more needs to be done. What role will NATO play in the days and months ahead? Let's find out.
The war in Ukraine is now a month old and counting. But not for a moment has this been just Ukraine's fight. From the very beginning of the invasion, it has had all the tremors of the global conflict. Those leading the crisis themselves warn that World War III could be ahead. Russia first triggered the ghost of a global war by placing its nuclear weapons on high alert in February, following the move with a warning that World War III would have to be nuclear and destructive.
Всем понятно, что Третья мировая может быть только ядерной. Но, обращаю ваше внимание,
everybody understands that World War III can only be nuclear. It is in the heads of the Western politicians that nuclear war is always revolving and not in the heads of the Russians.
что мы не позволим.
That is why I assure you that we will not allow any provocations to force us out of the balance. But if a real war against us starts developing, those who carry out such plans must have a think.
Реальную войну, ну, это, наверное, должны думать об этом те, кто такие планы вынашивает, а они...
Amidst Ukraine's sustained pleas for NATO to impose a no-fly zone over the invaded nation, Russia raised the spectre again, warning that any such move could trigger a third world war. And that's probably the reason why, despite vehemently condemning Russia, the US or the European Union have rejected Zelensky's demand to declare Ukraine's airspace a no-fly zone.
Хочемо запровадити закриття неба, тому що
We
конкретно
want to close the airspace because our children are being deliberately killed.
території Білорусі і
Missiles, bombs, jets are flying from the territory of Belarus and Russia.
і бомбардировщики.
Any move in this direction will be viewed by us as a participation in the armed conflict of whichever side whose territory will pose a threat to our service members. That very second we will view them as participants of the military conflict, and it would not matter what members they are.
Уже все равно, какими там членами они являются.
Wars were fought in Iraq, Syria, and also between two of the biggest nations, China and India. But never before did the risk of World War III looked as serious as it does now amid Russia's invasion of Ukraine. On a military scale, Russia's Ukraine war is limited. Yet the risk of World War III is bigger than ever and could just be a trigger away. Till now, Europe or America have refrained from sending troops to fight against Russia, limiting their response to sanctions and military aid. So why is the ghost of another world war so strong? World War is the name given to two multilateral wars that were essentially European. The First World War, fought during 1914 to 19, mainly involved Germany, Austria-Hungary and Turkey against the Allies, France, the UK, Soviet Russia, Italy, Japan, and from 1917, the United States. The Second World War, fought between 1939 to 1945, mainly involved Germany, Italy and Japan against France, UK, US and Soviet Russia. As the stakes pile up, as the pressure builds, and as the implications mount for Europe, the Russia-Ukraine war has the potential for a bigger war, both in weaponry and geography. Will NATO be pushed to impose a no-fly zone? And is that the one move separating the world from World War III? Bureau Report, India Today.
In the early hours of February 24th, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced an invasion, what Russia calls special military operations into Ukraine. The month that followed saw more than 10 million people displaced, towns bombarded beyond recognition. And now, as the conflict enters its second month, there are fears that this destruction could continue while there is no negotiated settlement in sight.
I decided to conduct a special military operation. It aims to protect people who have been bullied and subjected to genocide by Kiev regime for 8 years.
It all started with an early morning broadcast that stunned the world. The future of millions of Ukrainians changed with the blink of an eye. Now, a month and counting, Ukraine has survived ruthless bombing, brutal attacks, and endless hellscape. Russian forces are struggling to capture key Ukrainian cities, including Kyiv and Kharkiv. Kyiv still stands firm. Heavily outnumbered and outmuscled, yet Ukraine is giving them a bloody nose.
I thank everyone who acts in support of Ukraine, in support of freedom, but the war continues. The acts of terror against peaceful people go on. 1 month already. That's long. It breaks my hearts of all Ukrainians and every free person on the planet.
The war has spared no one. Toddlers, Kids, youngsters, elderly, all victims. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, over 10 million people have fled their homes, mostly women and children. With each passing hour, Ukraine war is fast becoming the fastest growing humanitarian crisis Europe has seen since the Second World War. Diplomatic efforts are on to secure a ceasefire, and yet reports of civilian deaths in Ukrainian cities continue to make headlines. Once a bustling, lively and colorful country, many Ukrainian cities are becoming ghost towns. Bureau Report, India Today.
Make no mistake, this is Cold War 2.0. Ukraine may just be the excuse, but this is the United States of America and Russia going head for head. The two biggest military powers, the two biggest nuclear powers in the world are facing off. Nuclear forces are being tested. Nuclear forces are carrying out their exercises. What does this mean? Not just for Ukraine or Russia. What does this mean for this region, for Europe, and actually the entire world? There is a clear realignment taking place globally, as our next report tells us more.
Cut forward a few decades and a very hot war in Ukraine has a cloud of the old Cold War all around it. Sit back while we prove to you that we are in Cold War 2.0. Proof 1. Direct US-Russia tension. The first piece of proof, the war in Ukraine has sparked the most high-level tensions between the US and Russia in decades, with both superpowers reviving historic angst to paint each other as global imperialistic aggressors running roughshod over world peace.
Did you ask me whether I was called? Oh, I think he is a war criminal.
Proof 2. Big global realignment. The second piece of proof is the global realignment of the international order. Hugely reminiscent of Cold War pressures, complex linkages aside, the world stands massed against Russia, its ally China, a neutral India, with the United States making it clear to nations that they are against Russia or with Russia. The crisis in Ukraine is visible, crafting a new world order. Proof 3. Nuke forces on high alert. The most tangible revival of Cold War tensions is clear in Russia's move to place its nuclear forces on high alert in the wake of NATO movements to help Ukraine. The move by Putin, explained away as a defensive posture by Moscow, has ratcheted up nuclear tensions to dangerous Cold War levels, forcing other nuclear nations, by most accounts, to keep their nukes dusted and ready too. Proof 4. Biowarfare allegations. The allegations of biological weapons laboratories and experimentation with germ warfare are also typical of the Cold War era crossfire. Russia threw the first punch in the current crisis by accusing the US of maintaining biowarfare facilities on Ukrainian soil. The US hit back, saying Putin intends to use bioweapons of his own, and the allegation is just cover fire for his own insidious intentions. Proof 5. Isolation through airspace. With several nations closing their airspace to Russia, the sense of geographic isolation has heightened dramatically in the first few weeks of the Ukraine invasion. With few flights in and out of Russia, the alienation of a superpower is palpable and in many ways is even more than how it was during the Cold War. Proof 6. Moscow unplugged from global economy. The crippling sanctions against Russia haven't slowed Putin's military rumble in Ukraine, but Russian citizens are most definitely feeling the heat. A Soviet-era arrogance that Russia can survive without the global economy is also representative of Cold War-era confidence. The suggestion that the world needs Russia more than Russia needs the world. Proof 7. Mass mobilization across Europe. Perhaps the most visible manifestation of a new Cold War, the readiness of militaries in Europe across NATO nations and the move of several other countries like Finland to consider joining NATO, creating a spectre of the Russian menace. The suggestion that it's Ukraine today and the other countries next, painting a scary Cold War scenario that goes just beyond the cold. There's real combat taking place in Ukraine for a whole month and counting. One thing is certain, whenever that battle ends, Cold War 2.0 won't end anytime soon. With Shivaru, Bureau Report, India Today.
Nobody expected Ukraine to last 29 days and counting. Ukraine fought back and continues to fight back. There are graveyards of Russian tanks, armored personnel carriers and even fighter jets and helicopters. Of course, with the weapons and systems provided by the North Atlantic Treaty Organization countries, especially the anti-tank guided missiles, the Javelins, the Stinger surface-to-air missiles and the Bayraktar unmanned combat aerial vehicles, major technology disruptors that have proven to be a game changer in this battle, at least so far. But the question remains, how long can Ukraine survive in the days and weeks ahead as Russia intensifies its assault on Ukraine?
Civilians training to pick up guns to fight for their country. Fathers and mothers with their teenage children take turns to learn how to operate machine guns.
We would like to watch and learn how to use arms to protect our children.
Ukraine has been training its citizens since the first week of March. They are all preparing for a lengthy war.
I believe that it is just in case, and I won't need this knowledge, but in case like the Russian invasion move further to Lviv, or maybe in case they will launch some missiles to Lviv, and maybe I would join some medical, medicine stuff, into medicine.
While ordinary Ukrainians train and prepare to defend their country, the world has gradually but steadily been helping the defender. Faced with a mighty aggressor, Ukraine looks severely out of favor from a military point of view. Yet a country with just 2 lakh active military personnel has been able to stand up to a behemoth Russian army that has sophisticated weaponry at its command. A large part of that fierce resistance comes from the swift transfer of military equipment by NATO and other allied countries. In a first, the 27-country bloc of the European Union signed off a $551 million package to help arm Ukraine. Germany has rewritten its long-standing policy that barred exporting weapons into war zones. Germany sent 1,000 anti-tank weapons, 500 Stinger anti-craft defense systems to Ukraine. Within days of the invasion, France reportedly promised to send military aid to Ukraine, but there's no publicly disclosed specifics of it. The United Kingdom has so far sent 2,000 short-range and anti-tank missiles, Saxon armored vehicles and Sky Sabre air defense system with 100 military operators. The US so far has been the largest contributor with 1,400 Stinger anti-aircraft missile systems, 4,600 Javelin anti-tank missiles, 5 Mi-17 helicopters, 3 patrol boats, 4 counter-artillery and counter-drone tracking radars, 2,000 light anti-armor weapons, 300 grenade launchers and ammunition. They've also sent 600 shotguns and 600 machine guns, 5,000 rifles, 1,000 pistols, 25,000 sets of body armor, 25,000 helmets. The US has so far sent nearly 40 million rounds of small arms ammunition, over 1 million grenades, mortar and artillery rounds, along with 70 Humvees and other vehicles, 6,000 at 4 anti-armor systems and 1,000 switchable drones.
I'm grateful to US President Biden for new effective aid for our country. You should understand that I can't reveal all the details of this package of aid and others. This is our defense tactic when the enemy doesn't know what to expect from us.
Justin Trudeau has been the next big military aid contributor in arming Ukraine after Joe Biden. Canada has sent nearly 4,500 M72 rocket launchers, 1,600 fragmentation vests, nearly 7,500 hand grenades. Other than that, it has also contributed $1 million to buy commercial satellite high resolution and modern imagery, machine guns, pistols and carbines. Canada has sent 1.5 million rounds of ammunition, sniper rifles and various related equipment worth $7.9 million to Ukraine so far. It has also contributed $19.9 million in military aid that could include helmets, body armor, gas masks and night vision gears. From Asia, Japan has sent bulletproof vests and helmets to Ukraine, and South Korea too has contributed to the war effort. The next door neighbor for both Russia and Ukraine, Poland has reportedly contributed tens of thousands of shells and artillery ammunition, anti-aircraft missiles, light mortars and reconnaissance drones. All three Baltic and Scandinavian countries too have contributed with military aid to arm Ukraine, as has other European countries. Australia and New Zealand have come with major military donations for Ukraine. But for now, all this help from around the world has not been able to convince Putin's army to back down. The war continues and destruction abounds.
US President Joe Biden is in Brussels. He also heads to Warsaw. This is a visit where military assistance not just to Ukraine but to NATO countries will be on the table, along with humanitarian assistance to Ukraine and to Poland. I will continue to track the story and get you the latest from Warsaw.
Moscow will keep a sharp eye on Biden's next moves with NATO allies. Keep watching India Today for an unparalleled war coverage.